So it's fairly easy to change the feet on your Handi quilter. This is what it comes with standard, a ruler foot and an open toe foot. And it's quite simple to change between your feet. You have the Allen key that you need to loosen your foot with. And should you wish to do this while you have a quilt under your needle, you might find that you can't take the foot out. It doesn't fall out this easily because the quilt is taking up the space. So should that happen and you can't get the foot out, just remember that the shank or the bar that your foot attaches to is sprung, so it can raise. You need to just grip it and lift it a little bit. And it's not an easy raise because it's meant to be tight to secure your quilt and make sure that the foot doesn't move too much while you're quilting. So you need to kind of lift it with meaning. And then you can simply lift it again and pop the other foot in if you don't drop it, like so. And just tighten the screw again. And remember, it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And you want to make sure that it's nice and tight, but don't force it so that you bend your foot eventually. And that's that. The various feet that we have available as additional accessories to your Handi quilter is the couching feet, which has 3 sizes of feet included, gives you 3 opening sizes for 3 different thicknesses of wool and yarn. We have the Hqsa feet that has additional spaces around the foot. So it's fabulous for when you want to do Hqsa quilting. That gives you 3/8 of an inch distance away, or make sure instead of our 1/4 inch spacing that we have from the needle to the side of the foot, you now have a 3/8 of an inch, a 1/2 inch spacing, and 3/4 of an inch spacing. So these 3 feet are included in this box set. Then we also have the sure foot. Your sure foot is even better to do your ruler work with because the lip of the foot is a bit higher than the standard ruler foot that we get with our machines. And just to make absolutely sure and certain that your foot does not hop onto your ruler. So sometimes when you've raised your foot for the thicker quilt that you are working with, you might find that you forget to lower it again when you're on a thinner quilt and the foot might hop onto your ruler. The sure foot avoids that because the lip is so much higher that you won't be hopping on top of your ruler and your ruler won't be slipping over or under your foot. We have the glide foot. The glide foot is a see-through foot. This is awesome when you are working especially with applique. Things like lace, embroidery work, anything that has a raised surface, 3D quilting for instance, 3D patchwork, anything where there's a higher surface than the majority of your quilting surface. This foot glides, and that's why it's called glide. It's almost like a spoon, and it doesn't get hooked onto your applique and embroidery or 3D work. So it's got a comfortable space that those pieces of fabric can slip almost under the foot, and you can get your stitching closer without getting your foot caught into the applique work. And the last one we have is the square foot. This is a newish foot that we have available. Fabulous for some ruler work, ideal to sew on your binding, to do quilt as you go, stitch and flip methods, because included in this box is a 1/4 inch seam allowance foot as well as 1/2 inch seam allowance foot. All of these feet can obviously work on our Sweet 16 sit down, but also on any of the frame models from the smallest one to the biggest. And it's as easy as loosening a screw and tightening it again.
bit of extra information about additional lighting that you can put with your machine, be it a Handi Quilter machine or any other brand, we've got a couple of options that can possibly work for you. So why might you want extra lighting? Well, not all of you are spoiled like I am with a purpose-built studio and lots of overhead lighting. You might be quilting in a spare bedroom, for instance, where you've got one pendant light in the center of the room. It doesn't necessarily give you good lighting to be able to quilt with, especially at night. So we all like to quilt most times of the day, so good lighting is a good thing. It means you can quilt for longer, less strain on your eyes. So a couple of options. The Handi Quilter machines, the older models, so for instance the Avantes, the Fusions and the Simply 16, they have slightly less lighting options than the newer models. So for instance the Avante, most of them, they just have a light collar around the needle here. So it shines nice light directly on the very immediate area that you're quilting on, but it doesn't spread the light particularly far. Sometimes you want it to be a bit brighter. So we've got a couple of options. So one of your options is the Handi light strip, Handi Quilter light strip. It's a strip of LED lights with a cable and a USB port on the plug on the end. A lot of machines, including ours, have USB ports on them. So the Handi Quilters are either on the side of the screen or on the side of the handlebars here. So if I just plug it in there, you'll see I get nice additional lighting. This then can be routed along the throat of your machine, like this, and you will get much better lighting then for the entire width of your frame. So the light strip is one option that you have that gives you sort of great general overall lighting in your quilting area. Option number 2 is this Handi light, HQ Handi light, and again let me see if I can fit it in. There we go. And this one you can clip onto your handlebars. It's got a very tightly sprung clip here. You can put onto your handlebars, and then with the gooseneck you can point it so you've got very specific lighting on a certain area. If you want to cast a shadow, for instance, if you're quilting with something that is you've got a blending thread on a specific color fabric, maybe it's white on white or green on green, sometimes it can be really difficult to see the thread and what area you're quilting. So by using this light you can throw shadows, and the shadows then actually help you to see what it is that you're doing. The machines themselves, depending what machine you have, the Fusions, the Avantes and the Infinity, they also have black lighting. So think of the Gauteng e-tall gantries with those purple lights, or when you go to a club and you're wearing a white shirt and you fluoresce, the same kind of thing. If you go to your menu and you choose lighting, you have UV lighting. So if I click on that, you'll see now I have purple lighting coming from the throat space here. That can also be extremely useful. I was telling you about the black lighting, so when you've got that purple UV light, it's really great when you're working color on color, specifically white on white, but you do need to have specific thread, or often a specific thread helps. So we've got here just a piece of white fabric that I've laid under the machine, and you can see I've got a blue thread on here and there's a normal white thread. If I was quilting with the white, it is really quite difficult to see what is going on. But with my fancy UV lights here, if I change just on my control panel and I put in on the UV light, you can see immediately that the blue looks much darker, much duller, but the white thread here is now starting to fluoresce. So I can see where I've quilted and what I'm busy with. So the UV lights, the black lights, are really helpful in certain instances. We've moved across to my Amara now, so this is one of the newer models of Handi Quilter machines, and it has more lighting options. So at the moment we have it set up with the lighting on full. You have lighting in the needle bar area, but you also have built-in lighting in the throat space. So I have everything on full beams, and at this light, this time of day at the moment, it's not too bad, but if I'm doing a lot of very close quilting, it can become quite difficult to see what is going on. So we're going to close some curtains, make it a bit darker, and then show you what differences you can create, or what effects you can create when you start to play with your lighting options. We are back, having turned off the overhead lighting and closed the curtains to make things a little bit darker, which means now we don't have flat light. If you have light from above, it tends to flatten things, which makes it sometimes quite difficult to see. So with the arrangement we have now, we can play a little bit more effectively with the lighting on the machine. If you look at the screen here, you'll see with the Amara, we have the option to adjust the lighting in the throat space or the lighting in the needle area, and we can work with them independently. So I can use the slider to reduce each one independently. On there, I can turn one off but leave the other on, both ways round, and I can turn everything off should I choose to. That one I'm not really going to do because then I can't see much at all. So I've got various options. Let's have a look at the fabric and see what difference it makes down there. My quilt that I'm working on here is for festival, so by the time you see this video you'll maybe have seen it. But I'm working with a very, very fine silk thread, but it's matching the color of my fabric, so it's sort of a sage green on a sage green, and it becomes very difficult to see what you're doing. So by casting shadows and creating contrast in your lighting, then you can help yourself a whole lot more and be able to actually see what you're doing. So if I reduce the lighting in the throat space, you start to have a different effect down in your working area. So that already looks a little bit easier for me, but let's try another way around. If I increase that throat space lighting again, but I reduce my needle bar lighting, or the lighting in the needle area, I've got much better shadows. So I can see now better what I'm doing, specifically, for instance, around the feathers here, when I wanted to do some very, very tight stitching. I can see much better. The only thing is I have a couple of shadows coming towards me, but that doesn't really matter unless I was trying to do piano key kind of quilting and I was stitching coming straight towards me each time. So by playing with your lighting, you can get different effects and you can find the combination that suits you best to be able to see what you're doing at that specific time.